Hello there, Romans here, and welcome to another installment in my Worst to Best series, where I take a discography of a certain group and I rank all of their studio albums going from worst to best based on my own personal opinion. I also review all the albums from a viewpoint of a musician, as I'm a singer, songwriter and a bass player for my own group Jericho, and last year we have released our debut album called Pursuits in Life. And what makes it unique is that it's a pretty heavy prog rock without guitars. Instead you have drums, bass, saxophone and keyboards. You can check out two of our singles on my YouTube channel. We're building our own monument and a studio live take of A Way to Oppose.
Open your eyes and take a look at our society. We wanna rise despite our decay of morality. How many more signs do we need?
And in the description of both videos you will find all the information about where's the record available. It's available on all digital platforms like Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, iTunes, Amazon, Bandcamp. But it's also available in this digipack version of a CD with a very beautifully illustrated 20 pages long booklet. So in case you want one, all you need to do is contact me via an email or on Instagram or Facebook or even through Bandcamp. And today I'm going to rank all studio albums from Helloween.
Music review. Music review.
I've been meaning to do this video for quite some time at this point. It all started in summer 2018 when I revisited their Chameleon album, and I've just realized that I haven't heard most of these records for like 8-9 years. So I decided to go through all of their albums. Took me like 6 or 7 months because I was always focusing at one album at a time. And as you can see, I'm a pretty big fan of Helloween. I have quite a lot of CDs of theirs. Seen them live twice, I have their t-shirt. I just want to say a few things before I start with this worst to best video. So, Helloween was one of the first bands I was really into when I was like 15, and this was pretty much a band that introduced me to metal. The first metal band I was really into. And since Walls of Jericho until Gambling with the Devil, I've heard all of these albums numerous times, so I pretty much know them back and forth. As someone who has heard more than 3,000 records in his life, my opinion is probably going to be pretty controversial, so try to keep in mind that it's just my opinion and try to go into this video with an open mind. And the final thing before I start, Helloween have released 15 studio albums, so I'm gonna talk just about the studio albums. Number 15, My God-Given Right from 2015, as of now their latest studio album. This is a record that I have listened to when it came out, because this was the second time I've seen Helloween live. They've played with Gotthard. And I remember that was a pretty interesting gig because Gotthard had some problems with their drummer who was hospitalized, so they had an improvised acoustic concert. But I wanted to get familiar with this record because of Helloween, but it's very cliche, very forgettable, and this is just an easily skippable album because pretty much everything that's on this record has been done before, and I won't even say by other bands in the genre, but by Helloween themselves. And the weird thing is that they just ripped themselves off on certain tracks, like My God-Given Right. The verses have pretty much the same melody as the song Power from The Time of the Oath.
Why should I wait? What is left there for me? I come to claim to win the game. Why should I plead for my fair and right foot? Can you imagine someone being true? Turn around and put yourself in front of you. Sometimes it's
If God Loves Rock and Roll, the chorus, again, almost the same melody as the song Final Fortune from the Gambling with the Devil.
If God loves rock and roll, I better protect my soul. 'Cause heaven seems to be the place I want. When fate comes calling you, you don't know what to do. Behind the world we're living in.
Best songs on the album are Swing of a Fallen World. Then Russian Roulette has a good chorus, and I kind of wish the whole song was like that. Claws is okay, and You Still of War sounds like from Keeper of the Seven Keys, The Legacy. It's also a pretty cool track, but the rest is not good. Number 14, Straight Out of Hell from 2013. This is the only album I didn't check out when it came out, and it pretty much has the same problems as My God-Given Right. very cliche, very repetitive. There's nothing new. They started ripping themselves off. The track Years has pretty much the same chorus as the song Guardians from the first album. Nabatia actually showed some promise. When I heard that song, I really liked that idea of Helloween going oriental, which is something they haven't really done before. But it's not a bad track. It's one of the best songs on the album. The children part sounds a bit like Disease from the track Keeper of the Seven Keys. The title track sounds a bit like Edguy because of those keyboards, but that makes it more memorable. And Make Fire Catch Fly is pretty cool as a track, but that's it. The rest is, in my opinion, also forgettable. Number 13, Seven Sinners from 2010. So this is a record that still has the same problems as the records I've talked about so far, with the only difference being that there are a few more tracks that I can enjoy. Songs like Where the Sinners Go, Are You Metal, Long Live the King, You Stupid Mankind. Even My Sacrifice is okay, or Far in the Future, but the rest is kinda cheesy in my opinion. So number 12, Master of the Rings from 1994. This was a pretty transitional record, probably the most transitional record for Helloween, as the singer who made the band famous, Michael Kiske, was thrown out of the band. Also, the same thing happened with the original drummer Ingo Schwichtenberg, and they got a new singer, Andy Daris, who is in the band up until this day, and Uli Kush on drums. I'm not gonna go into a debate who is a better singer, Daris or Kiske. I personally prefer Kiske, but these two singers are simply very different from each other. This is also considered to be Helloween's masterpiece and a very important record. I can definitely see why, but first let's analyze the record. I really don't like the intro of the album because it gives you this impression that you're gonna listen to a power metal album filled with the stories about warriors and fairy tales, kind of like Blind Guardian stuff. But the actual album doesn't really go in that way, so it's not very appropriate. There are some really great tracks on this record, like for example Soul Survivor is a badass track, I love it. Why is also a cool rock song. Perfect Gentleman, one of the best tracks from Helloween.
Yes, I am a perfect gentleman. Yes,
And In the Middle of a Heartbeat would have been a huge hit if written by Bon Jovi.
I found out in the middle of a heartbeat, and I know that I'm doing right. Together we are still so far apart.
And I think that all these tracks showed how great of a songwriter Andy Daris was, because I think he was the main guy behind these tracks. Michael Waycott always felt as the weakest songwriter in every lineup for me. Where the Rain Grows is kinda okay power metal track, but there are two songs on this album that are absolutely horrible. The Game Is On and Secret Alibi. I mean, these two tracks are like songs made for children in kindergarten. They are so happy that they make me vomit. And the funny thing is that Helloween had some unused material that was used in the form of B-sides for singles, and there was a song written by Markus Groskopf, the bass player, and he wrote the track Silicon Dreams. Very good song that is much better than these two horrendous tracks, and I think it should have been on a record instead of them. Also, the three tracks written by Roland Grappo, who was really on fire as a songwriter on previous two albums, are kinda average in my opinion. I mean, Take Me Home is a song I never really liked. Mr. Ego is okay, but nothing really more than okay. And Still We Go is probably the best of the three tracks. It's a pretty cool song, probably the only really metal song on this album, and I think this is what a lot of fans get kind of wrong, that This album has been seen as a Helloween's return to metal, because the previous album Chameleon has been anything but metal, but this album is not really metal. I would say it's hard rock record, much more in the vein of Pink Cream 69, the band from which Andy Darius came to this group. Number 11, The Time of the Oath from 1996. So this was the follow-up album to the Master of the Rings, and now this was an actual return of Helloween to metal, because this is a much darker and heavier album than Master of the Rings. So let's look at the songs that Andy Darius wrote. So I think We Burn and Before the War, both of these tracks are very heavy, fast songs that sort of have that feeling like they were trying to remind you of Walls of Jericho record. And Forever and One is definitely one of the most iconic metal ballads of all times. I think it's great, I just have heard it way too many times for my own good. Then Kush, Uli Kush, the drummer, was proving to be a pretty good songwriter. Wake Up the Mountain is a great track. Also, Million to One is pretty good, even though I think it would do with a better chorus. Then Michael Wakeath's Steel Tormentor is pretty cool. Power is a huge 90s hit. I actually like this song a lot. Again, as with Forever and One, I've heard it way too many times. There are two fillers. Kings Will Be Kings and If I Knew are both very average tracks. Also, Anything My Mama Don't Like is kind of a rock and roll or hard rock song in that silly fashion that Helloween were known for, but the tone of the song just simply doesn't fit with the rest of the album. It sounds very out of place, and I personally wouldn't have put it on the record. There is also a hidden gem, Mission Motherland. This is a great song. I really love all those instrumental parts, especially that mid-section where you hear that riff and the whole song slows down. I think it's perfect. The only part I don't like is that power metal bridge or whatever that is, and in the booklet it is written that this song has been written by Wakeath/Helloween, so I guess this is his part. I would have deleted that part. Otherwise, great track. And I haven't mentioned the title song by the Roland Grappo, The Time of the Oath, which is a masterpiece. This is just one of the best metal songs I've ever heard, and I'm just so sad that the whole record isn't like that. Number 10, Rabbit Don't Come Easy from 2003. This was another sort of a transitional record because Roland Grappo and Uli Kush were thrown out of the band, and Danny Leble, their current drummer, joined them only after the, I think either for the tour for this album or after the tour, but they got Sascha Paeth, the guitar player and one of the songwriters who is in the band up until this day. Rabbit Don't Come Easy is generally considered to be one of the weakest albums from Helloween, but I actually think it's pretty good. There are only two songs I don't like on this album, both of which were written by Michael Wakeath. The tune and the track Do You Feel Good, which is just really very bad, and this song was written throughout the Dark Ride sessions, so imagine that track on a Dark Ride record. There are some songs that are just okay, like for example Just a Little Sign, Helloween trying way too hard to sound like Helloween, but I like some parts, for example those riffs after the chorus. Open Your Eyes, Never Be a Star, Don't Stop Being Crazy, a nice ballad. All these tracks are pretty okay. Listen to the Flies would do with a better chorus, and very out of place song, but in a good way, is Nothing to Say, written by Michael Wakeath, which is very, very playful. You have even some reggae parts, and it generally has a very summer vibe, which is something not very typical for Helloween. The best songs on this record are Liar, Sound for the World, Hell Was Made in Heaven, and Back Against the Wall. I love Back Against the Wall, and I really love Helloween at their darkest and heaviest, and I just wish that they were writing all tracks like that, because this is how I like them the most.
I'm standing back against the wall. Back against the wall. Get back.
Number 9, Better Than Raw from 1998. This is somehow overlooked album, not only by the band but also by fans and critics. I don't really get it why. I think it's a much better album than the previous two ones. Again, it has a power metal intro, but it's better than on Master of the Rings. The best tracks on the album are Hey Lord, a huge hit, Don't Spit on My Mind. I mean, that chorus is heavy. I love it.
Spit on my mind. Don't spit on my mind. Don't spit on my mind. Don't spit on my mind.
Revelation is also a great song and a bit proggy, written by the drummer Likush. And also Handful of Pain is I think pretty good. Then Time is a very interesting song that is written to the, I think it's written to the rhythm of a time, and it shows a band willing to experiment. Even though that song may not be everyone's cup of tea, I think it's pretty interesting.
Help him if you can, his hour will come soon. Push away his fear, he'll see Elysium.
I Can is a fantastic rock song.
I can make it all again. I don't wanna lose, don't wanna go down. I can.
The weaker tracks are Push. I have never been a real fan of that track, even though the chorus is cool. And Laudate Dominum is just really bad song. This is the song I skip. Some bonus tracks are actually much better than this one. Falling Higher sounds a little bit like Steel's Hermancer, and another track written by Michael Wakath is Midnight Sun, which is also that power metal winning song, but this one I can listen to without any need to turn it over. Okay, number 8, Gambling with the Devil from 2007. This album came out at the time when I wasn't really interested in power metal and speed metal and Helloween for that matter anymore, and a friend of mine wrote me that you should really check this record out, I think it's great. So I checked it out and I liked it so much that I actually ordered a copy right after the first listening of the album. It's a very good album. There is only one really bad song on this album, written by Michael Wakath, Can't Do It, horrible track. But apart from that, Kill It is a very good song that kind of seems like a Push remake, but it's much better. The Saints is a typical power metal celebrating song by Michael Wakath, but I actually like it a lot. As Long As I Fall is almost like an artistic metal track, and this is the track that made me interested in checking out the record. Paint a New World is a very modern song that I think would still sound as a modern metal track even now. Final Fortune, great track that was showing Markus Groskop's songwriting abilities. I also like Heavy and Dark, Bells of the Seven Hells. All those heavy parts are great, but I would make the whole song heavy and I would change those winning parts or those very melodic parts because they just don't really go together very well. Fallen to Pieces is an orchestral song, also very good. IME is also very cool. Then Dreambound, this was interesting. When I was listening to Dreambound, if you are a fan of Avantasia, in 2010 they have released 2 albums, and on Angel of Babylon they have a song Stargazer. And I think that Toby might have got some inspiration for that chorus from the song Dreambound, because these 2 tracks have almost identical choruses. Heaven Tell No Lies is also a bit proggy, it's a pretty cool track. Number 7, Keeper of the Seven Keys, The Legacy from 2005. This is kind of a strange offering because it's kind of like Operation Mindcrime 2 from Queensryche. There is this question, why did they do Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 3? Because this is a sequel to two of their most successful albums. But at the time when this record came out, there were only 2 band members who were in the band at the time when the original 2 Keepers came out, and only one of them contributed from a songwriting point of view. This is a double album and the only one so far from Helloween, and it's not very well balanced because there are some phenomenal tracks and some pretty bad ones. So let's look at CD1. King for 1,000 Years is a masterpiece. I love that song. It's almost 14 minutes long, but not one single second is wasted. I love that track. Then Invisible Man, written by Sascha Paeth, is another phenomenal track. I love that it's kind of in the style of traditional power metal track, but it's made with so much innovation that I just don't understand why more young bands don't try to do something like this. And Born on Judgment Day by Michael Wakeath is also pretty good. Pleasure Dome is another great song. Mrs. God is kind of this cheeky, funny track by Helloween, but I like it. Also Silent Rain is okay. And then when we look at the CD2, the first track, Occasion Avenue, is another phenomenal track. I love it. So heavy, I love all those chords and vocals, it's phenomenal. The rest of the CD2, maybe with the exception of My Life for One More Day, is as forgettable as it can get. And I just wish that they made all those other tracks as bonus tracks and they kept the best material as the main album. Maybe it would have been higher on my list. I love this album, and the tracks I don't like, I simply delete or skip. Number 6, Pink Bubbles Go Ape from 1991. Well, so we're getting into the controversial territory. This was the first album where they had a major change in the lineup, where the original songwriter and one of the main songwriters of the band, Kai Hansen, left the group, and they got a new guitar player, Roland Grappo, who in my opinion was maybe even a lot superior in terms of technical skills. But as I've heard Michael Kiske talking about his record in retrospect, he said that certain magic was lost when he left the group, and I definitely have to agree, certain magic was lost, and it's a record that feels a bit unfocused. So let's look at the tracks. Michael Kiske wrote Kids of the Century, which is very artistic, innovative and metal track. I really love it. Going Home is more poppy track, but in a way very Helloween-like, and Your Turn is just a beautiful ballad.
Now it's your turn to break free. When you want it all, you gotta see.
Then Michael Wakeath wrote Number 1, which is a pop song. In a way, I think it's okay, but Heavy Metal Hamsters really should have been more of a B-side of a single. And Markus Grosskopf wrote an interesting song, I'm Doing Fine Crazy Man, which is essentially a 60s psychedelic rock song. And with these tracks you can see that it was the 2 original members who were pushing the band into a different territory. A lot of people like to blame Michael Kiske for Pink Bubbles Go Ape and Chameleon, that it was him who ruined the band and whatever. It was the other two band members who were trying to go to a different territory. And Roland Grappo, who was the new reinforcement for the band, was really on fire. Back on the Street is a very cool track. Someone is Crying is probably the only speed metal song and I really like it. Mankind is this prog epic masterpiece. I absolutely love that track. And then there's that sort of a 80s rock anthem, The Chance. So even though certain magic was lost, it really shows a band that wasn't necessarily sure where to go to. And even if you look at the input by Michael Wakeath, after 3 years he came up with 2 tracks. So this must have been a difficult period for a band. But apart from that, I think that this is a pretty cool and enjoyable record. Number 5, Dark Ride from 2000. This is, in my opinion, the best album from the Andy Darius era. It's just so dark and heavy, and I don't understand why did they have to change their lineup every time Helloween got interesting for me. It has a great intro that really sets the mood properly for the whole record. Mr. Torture is phenomenal track.
Inside you can sense the anguish, theater of pain has just begun. Mr. Torture is playing with his whips and his chains. He knows just what to play.
Escalation 666 is another fantastic track. Also Mirror Mirror or Departed. I love these tracks, and this is where I will return to that Kiske Darius comparison. Yeah, I think Michael Kiske has a better tone, and Andy Darius never really sounded very good singing old stuff, and it was kind of a burden he had to carry being the singer of Helloween. But can you imagine Michael Kiske singing these songs? I personally can't. Andy Darius sounds like some kind of a creature lurking in the dark, and he kind of sounds, or uses similar technique to the singer from Rage, but I love his vocal performance here. He just sounds great.
Black, you stripped me, revealed to me the secrets of your pain, painful lies.
If I Could Fly is another very artistic and great track.
If I could fly like a king of the sky, could not tumble nor fall, I would picture it all. If I could fly.
We Damned the Night and the title track Dark Ride, all the tracks I really like. The tracks that are a bit like okay but nothing special, I Live For Your Pain and Immortal. And I even kinda like the songs that Michael Wakeath wrote, Salvation and All Over the Nations, both of which are again these very power metal tracks, but I don't skip them and I actually enjoy them. Number 4, Walls of Jericho. As you can see, I've had all of their albums as they were re-released in 2006, so those are all extended versions. So at number 4 I don't have only their Walls of Jericho album from 1985, but also the Helloween EP that came before it, and the one track Judas. So pretty much all the material that Helloween recorded when they were a 4-piece, when they didn't have Michael Kiske as a singer, where the guitar player Kai Hansen was the lead singer here. And I think this is a masterpiece, really. One of the most unique metal albums. I absolutely love this record. And when I returned to it a couple of months ago, I was like, wow, this record is... I almost forgot how good it was, because I haven't heard it in like 9 years. So absolutely great songwriting, and I think that if we don't take Keeper of the Seven Keys into consideration, this record in terms of songwriting hasn't really been challenged by any other bands in the genre, in my opinion. There's so much innovation. I think this record should have been as popular as Iron Maiden were with their first records, or Metallica. When it comes to the tracks on the EP, they're great. I love those unorthodox and atypical choruses like Warrior, Murderer.
In every town, to the world,
Also, Starlight is a great track, Victim of Fate, Cry for Freedom, also great. And then when we get to the actual record, Walls of Jericho, the opening song has a riff like Slayer, it's so heavy. Then we have hard rock song, Phantoms of Death, the anthem Metal Invaders. Then heavy metal meets punk in songs like Gorger or Heavy Metal is the Law. Also, How Many Tears has a great melody.
How many tears flow away to become a sea of tears? How many hearts are torn apart to remember torn and
And Judas is a bit of a Aces High from Iron Maiden ripoff, but still a great song. I really like this album. I think it's great. Kai Hansen's voice may not be everyone's cup of tea. I think it's pretty much an acquired taste. And he had a great technique, huge vocal range. His tone wasn't really great, and I've heard a lot of people saying that wouldn't it be great if Michael Kiske sang on this album? No, it wouldn't. There are a few tracks that were recorded with Michael for, I think, the next album's bonus version. If Michael Kiske sang on this album, it would have been equally raw and dirty. And I think it's Kai Hansen's voice that really just perfectly fits this record. At number 3, I have Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 from 1988. I remember this was one of the very first albums that I was exposed to. I was like 15 years old. And when I bought this record, the 2006 extended editions were still not out. So I have the original 1988 pressing without the bonus tracks. This is really one of the records that I grew up with. I remember listening to it. It was the winter 2005. And that was a time when I worshipped Michael Kiske. I was like, oh my god, I want to sing like him. And this is really a great album. This is actually considered to be the most successful, most influential and the best album from Helloween. I can definitely see why. It's great. It's got a great intro. I think that Kai Hansen rules as a songwriter here. March of Time is a phenomenal track.
Cause time marches on with us all. Never stops, yes, time.
I Want Out, one of the biggest metal hits, if I can call it that way. Also Save Us is a great track, which was a bonus track for CD versions. The songs from Michael Kiske are interesting. These are the tracks I didn't really like when I was 15 years old, because they are a little more proggy and they sound almost like they were written by Queensryche. But lately I've been enjoying them a lot more than the rest of the tracks. You Always Walk Alone and We Got No Right. Both of them are great.
If you believe that you know in this time you've got anything to win. If you believe that you know that I say you lose again. In this time it's not fair.
Then Michael Waycott wrote Eagle Fly Free, which is one of the biggest metal anthems of all times.
Eagle fly free, let people see, just like a toad will. Leave time behind.
Rise and Fall is kind of funny, but it's a cool track. Also Dr. Steen is great. Keeper of the Seven Keys is an epic track that really showed that Helloween had that potential to be a progressive band. There are some even Pink Floyd-like moments. What I feel a bit disappointed with is that there were 3 bonus tracks, 2 of which are forgettable, but the track Savage, written by Michael Kiske, which is almost like a thrash metal track, should have been on a record.
They just call us savage, and that's what I like to be. Let them call us savage, 'cause that's what we like to be. Savage.
Number 2, Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 from 1987. This is another metal classic, and I like this just a bit more than Part 2, and I will explain in a second why. So Kai Hansen absolutely dominates and rules as a songwriter here. It has a cool intro, I'm Alive, is a great track, and I love that uplifting guitar solo that just makes you feel like, yeah, I can do whatever I want. And similar to that guitar solo is the beginning of the song Twilight of the Gods, which is again very badass track.
Xenia 204.
Future World is another classic, and the title track Helloween is an absolute masterpiece. I think it's in the same league as the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, for example, from Iron Maiden. Also, Wakeath wrote a beautiful ballad, one of the most iconic metal ballads, A Tale That Wasn't Right. This is actually why I like this album a little more than part 2, because it has a ballad, so it's like a whole package. Kiske Little Time is also a very cool track that has some Pink Floyd-ish moments with those ticking clocks and sound effects. And also the ambient closing track, Follow the Sign, which I wish was a little longer, but it's another different color to the record. Okay, it's time for number 1, Chameleon from 1993. Now I know most of you think that it's a joke. It's not. This is probably my most favorite album of all times. I absolutely love this record. Also, kudos to the conductor, because a lot of these songs are elevated because of the inclusion of orchestra and all the orchestral arrangements. And even though I've heard in some interview that Michael Kiske, for example, had a keyboard and he was like emulating saxophone arrangements, I think a lot of the arrangements came from the conductor who was with the orchestra, and it makes the song just a lot better, a lot better. This album has an absolutely perfect production, one of the best sounding records I've ever heard. Also, Kiske, in my opinion, sounds a lot better and shows a lot more of his vocal abilities than on the previous albums. And this record was pretty much like 3 band members, so Michael Kiske, Roland Grappo and Michael Wakeath, so both guitar players, writing all 4 tracks for this album and putting them together. So, let's start with Grappo. I really love Crazy Cat, which is like rock and roll meets swing, which was very ahead of its time. Music is just one of my all-time favorite tracks. Lyrics maybe a bit cheesy and maybe not as poetic, but really phenomenal track.
Music is like sunrise slowly. It's joyful like a trail in a time machine.
Step Out of Hell is a would-have-been hit in the 80s. And also I Don't Wanna Cry No More is a very pretty and complex ballad, and it has just a beautiful guitar solos, first on acoustic guitar, then on electric guitar. The guitar work on this album is out of this place. Then Michael Kiske wrote When the Sinner, which is just a very artistic prog pop song. Then I think it's amazing. In the Night is a bluesy number, very nice song. I believe is probably as prog as Helloween have ever been. A phenomenal track. Also, Longing is a beautiful ballad that is very innovative, in my opinion. Very unique. When it comes to the Michael Wakeath, he wrote First Time, which is kind of a badass hard rock song. I think it maybe would do better with a heavier chorus, but I have heard his record so many times that I kind of got used to it. Giants is the heaviest track on the album, and I think it's absolutely epic. Shitmail, I know that a lot of people call this song Shitmail, and maybe it's a bit cheesy, but I kind of like it. Maybe again I got used to it after hearing it so many times. I think that the instrumental parts are nice, and Revolution Now is like a late 60s, early 70s hard rock song. I think it's cool. Some people complain that it's too long. I guess I agree to a certain degree, but I really like how the final chorus works as a sort of a climax, and I also like that melodic part from one of the very iconic 60s or 70s songs. And I think that this song just adds to the general colorfulness of the record. This album is just so colorful, and I think it has been just so misunderstood. I mean, whoever says that this album is bad and likes the songs like The Game Is On or Secret Alibi or Master of the Rings is nothing but a hypocrite. And I think that it really showed that the only sign of quality for metal fans was double bass, melodies like from fairy tales for children, high-pitched vocals, and they didn't care about the actual quality of the music, because it's really like the form over the quality. So there you have it. I guess this is a very long video, so in case you have finished it, thanks a lot for watching. You can let me know in the comment section below what is your own list of Helloween's records going from worst to best, whether you agree with me or not. If you like this video, don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe. You can check out my own original music, my live performances, my worst to best series. I have other videos as well and a lot of other reviews. And once again, thanks a lot for watching.